Hey everyone, and welcome back to the SafeSimpleSound podcast, College Planning Edition. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're diving deep into the increasingly complex world of college costs. This is a topic that touches so many families, and at SafeSimpleSound, we believe in seizing financial control and understanding financial choices. And that absolutely applies to higher education. Today's episode is based on an insightful article titled Understanding Today's College Costs: What Every Family Needs to Know. To really get to grips with these challenges, we'll follow a clear structure today. First, we'll delve into the growing gap: college costs versus household income. We'll look at the realities facing families like the Joneses, who are just starting to grapple with college costs for their high school sophomore, and the Smiths, who have been proactively saving but need to reassess their strategy. Then we'll move on to breaking down the true cost of college. This is where we'll unpack those hidden expenses. We'll follow Maria, who was surprised by unexpected costs even with a partial scholarship, and David, who's facing the difficult decision between an in-state and out-of-state university. We even have the Thompsons family, who are dealing with the question of room and board versus commuting. Finally, we'll wrap up with the evolution of financial aid and the power of early planning. We'll navigate the FAFSA with the Rodriguez family, explore scholarship strategies with Lisa, and consider the options for the Millers, who are getting a late start on college planning. This episode is all about embracing mastery of cash flow and creating a financial safety net when it comes to one of the biggest investments many families will ever make: their children's education. So buckle up, because we're about to make the complex world of college financing safe, simple, and sound. Let's get started. So picture this: the Jones family. They have a daughter, Sarah, who's a sophomore in high school. They live in a state with moderately priced public universities, and they've always encouraged Sarah to pursue a 4-year degree. Their combined household income is $85,000, which puts them a bit above the median, but, and this is a big but, they have very little saved for college. Sound familiar?
Absolutely. It's a situation I think a lot of families can relate to. They're doing okay, but college wasn't really on the financial radar until recently, and suddenly it's looming large.
Precisely. Sam, let's bring you in here. Given this scenario, $85,000 income, a high school sophomore, and minimal savings, how can the Jones family realistically assess their ability to contribute to Sarah's education? Where do they even start?
Well, Alex, the first step is a frank and open conversation, both within the family and potentially with a financial advisor. They need to pull together all their financial information: income, expenses, debts, any assets, and get a clear picture of their current financial standing. This isn't just about affording tuition, it's about the total cost of attendance, which includes room and board, books, fees, and even transportation.
That's a good point, Sam. It's not just the sticker price of tuition. The article mentioned that for public universities, room and board can actually exceed tuition. That's wild.
It is, Taylor, and it often catches families off guard. From the reference article, we know that those extra costs, as the article put them, can make up 18% of the costs at public universities. So Sam, what concrete numbers are we talking about here for a public in-state university?
Based on the 2024-2025 data, the average total cost for an in-state public university is around $28,730 per year. Tuition and fees are about $11,600, but room and board are over $12,000. Then you have books, supplies, and other expenses adding another few thousand.
Okay, so nearly $30,000 a year. If the Joneses have, say, 2.5 years until Sarah starts college, and they have almost nothing saved, that's a pretty steep climb. If I'm understanding correctly, even if they magically found a way to cover the tuition portion, they'd still be facing over half the total cost in those other expenses.
Exactly, Taylor. That's why a realistic assessment is so crucial. They need to determine how much they can realistically contribute each month now and project that forward. They also need to factor in any potential income increases, but also any other financial obligations they have.
So what are some immediate steps they can take, Sam, to start bridging that gap, even with this limited time? Are there any quick wins?
There are a few things. First, explore the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. Even if they think they won't qualify for much need-based aid, completing it is essential. It opens the door to federal student loans, and some schools use it for merit-based aid as well. Second, start researching scholarships now. There are thousands of scholarships out there, some based on merit, some on specific interests or backgrounds. Don't wait until senior year.
That reminds me of what we discussed about proactive planning in a previous episode. The earlier you start, the more options you have. Are there any specific resources for finding scholarships, Sam?
Absolutely. Websites like FastWeb, scholarships.com, and the College Board's Big Future are good starting points. Also, check with Sarah's high school guidance counselor. They often have information on local scholarships.
Okay, that's good practical advice. But let's address the elephant in the room. Should the Joneses, given their financial situation, adjust their expectations about Sarah attending a 4-year college right away? Is that a conversation they need to have?
It's a tough conversation, Alex, but a necessary one. There are alternatives. Sarah could start at a community college for 2 years, which is significantly less expensive, and then transfer to a 4-year university. That can dramatically reduce the overall cost. Or she could consider a gap year to work and save money. The key is to have an open and honest discussion about the financial realities and explore all the options.
So it's not about saying no to college, but maybe not right now or not in the way we initially envisioned. It's about finding a path that's financially sustainable.
Precisely, Taylor. And that's a key takeaway for all of us. It's about making informed choices, not limiting opportunities. The Jones family, and any family in a similar position, need to have these difficult but essential money talks. Excellent points all around. So to recap, the Jones family, like many American families, is facing a significant challenge in funding their daughter's college education. They need to, 1, have a frank and open conversation about their finances. 2, understand the total cost of attendance, not just tuition. 3, explore financial aid options, including the FAFSA and scholarships, starting now. And 4, be open to alternative paths, like community college or a gap year. And our call to action for listeners today is this. Start the college cost conversation with your family early. Don't wait until senior year. Use online net price calculators available on most college websites to get a realistic estimate of costs at different institutions. Knowledge is power, and the earlier you start planning, the better prepared you'll be. Next, we'll shift our focus to another family, the Smiths, who have taken a more proactive approach to college savings. They started 529 plans early, but are they on track? We'll dive into their situation and explore whether their current contributions are sufficient to meet the rising costs of college.
That's a good contrast, Alex. It's easy to think, okay, I started at 529, I'm good. But with the way college costs are changing, it's probably not that simple, right?
Exactly, Taylor. The Smiths have twin children in middle school. They earn a combined income of $120,000 and commendably started a 529 plan for each child when they were born. They've been contributing $200 per month to each plan. They're aware of rising costs but haven't recently reviewed their strategy. So they're in a better position than the Joneses, but are they truly prepared? Sam, let's bring you in. Given the projected increase in college costs, are the Smiths' current 529 contributions likely to be sufficient?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or perhaps the hundreds of thousands of dollars question, given college inflation. While the Smiths' proactive start is fantastic, we need to remember the stark figures from our reference article. Public university tuition increased by 231% between 2000 and 2024, while private tuition went up 154%. Median household income, however, only rose by 27%. That gap is widening, and it's impacting even families who planned ahead.
So, even with their consistent contributions, the Smiths might be falling behind without realizing it. It's like running on a treadmill that keeps getting faster. You have to actively increase your speed to keep up, not just maintain the same pace.
Perfect analogy, Taylor. It's not enough to just have a plan. You need to actively manage it. Sam, what resources can the Smiths use to project future college costs and adjust their savings plan accordingly?
There are several excellent resources. First, many 529 plan providers themselves offer projection calculators. These tools allow you to input your current savings, contribution rate, estimated college start date, and anticipated inflation rate to see if you're on track. There are also independent websites and financial planning tools that offer similar calculators, often with more customizable options. The key is to use a realistic inflation rate for college costs, probably higher than the general inflation rate.
So, it's not just about plugging in numbers, it's about using informed assumptions. What would be a reasonable inflation rate to use for college costs, given that it's been so much higher than general inflation?
That's a great question, Taylor. While past performance isn't a guarantee of future results, looking at the historical data is a good starting point. Based on the 231% increase over 24 years for public tuition in our reference article, that's an average annual increase of roughly 5.2%. General inflation is often closer to 2 to 3%. I'd recommend the Smiths use a range, perhaps 5 to 7% for college cost inflation, to see a range of possible outcomes. This will give them a more conservative and likely more accurate projection.
That makes a lot of sense. A stress test for their college savings plan, in a way. And beyond 529 plans, Sam, what other savings or investment vehicles might be appropriate for the Smiths to consider?
Absolutely. 5 and 29 plans are great, offering tax advantages, but diversification is always a good idea. For example, the Smiths could consider 1. Roth IRAs. While primarily for retirement, Roth IRA contributions can be withdrawn tax-free and penalty-free at any time for any reason. This can provide flexibility. Earnings can also be withdrawn penalty-free for qualified education expenses. 2. Taxable brokerage accounts. These offer no specific tax advantages for education, but they provide maximum flexibility. They can invest in a wider range of assets, like individual stocks or ETFs. 3. Coverdell Education Savings Accounts. These are similar to 529s, but with lower contribution limits. However, they offer more investment options. 4. U.S. Savings Bonds. These are very safe, but offer lower returns. They can be a good option for a portion of the savings, adding a very conservative element. Number 5. Whole life insurance. These are very safe places to let your money grow at safe and steady rate without getting taxed during the growth phase. They don't count towards assets in SAI. If needed, money can be accessed as withdrawals or loans.
So it's not just about how much you save, but also where you save it. Having different buckets with different levels of risk and accessibility can be helpful. This reminds me of what we discussed about diversifying investments in general. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly, Taylor. It's all about creating a balanced and flexible plan. The Smiths and anyone saving for college should consider their overall financial picture, their risk tolerance, and the time horizon until college starts.
Precisely. And remember, professional financial advisors can help tailor a plan to a family's specific circumstances. They can analyze cash flow, assess risk tolerance, and recommend a diversified approach.
Excellent point, Sam. To recap, even if you've started saving early for college, it's crucial to regularly review and adjust your plan. Use college cost projection calculators, consider a range of inflation rates, and explore different savings vehicles beyond 529 plans. For our listeners, our call to action today is review your college savings plan annually and adjust contributions as needed to keep pace with rising costs. Explore different savings vehicles. Next up, we'll be diving deeper into the true cost of college beyond just tuition. We'll be looking at Maria's story, a student who received a partial scholarship but was still surprised by unexpected expenses. We'll be breaking down those hidden costs and discussing how to budget for them effectively.
That sounds really relevant. I remember being surprised by some costs when I first started college, even with a partial scholarship.
Exactly. Maria's story is a classic example. She received a partial scholarship covering 75% of her tuition at a public university. Fantastic news, right? But then her first semester hit, and suddenly there were books, supplies, student fees, all these things that added up quickly and put a real strain on her budget. Sam, let's bring you in here. How could Maria and her family have better anticipated these hidden college costs?
Well, Alex, the key word there is hidden, but they don't have to be. The information is out there. It just often gets overlooked in the excitement of getting that acceptance letter and the scholarship offer. The problem is that families tend to focus almost entirely on tuition. Tuition is a big number, so it grabs your attention. But as we saw in the reference article, at public institutions, tuition and fees are, on average, only about 39% of the total cost.
Wow, only 39%. That's lower than I would have thought. So what makes up the rest?
The biggest chunk, surprisingly, is room and board, housing and food. That averages around 43% at public universities. Then you have books and supplies, transportation, and a category called other expenses, which can include things like personal care items, technology, maybe even club dues or social events.
So even if Maria's tuition was largely covered, that remaining 25% of tuition plus all those other categories could still represent a significant amount of money.
Absolutely. Let's break it down using the numbers from our reference article. For an in-state student at a public four-year university, the total average cost is around $28,730. Tuition and fees are about $11,610. If Maria's scholarship covers 75% of that, she's still responsible for roughly $2,950 of tuition. But then add on room and board, $1,200, books and supplies, $1,320, transportation, $1,250, and other expenses, $2,250. Suddenly, she's looking at over $20,000 in expenses, even with that scholarship.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, the scholarship is great, but it's like getting a discount on only one item in a very full shopping cart. You still have to pay for everything else.
That's a perfect analogy, Taylor. So Sam, what resources are available to students like Maria who find themselves facing these unexpected costs during the academic year?
Several options exist, but the key is proactive communication. First, Maria should contact her university's financial aid office. They might have emergency funds, short-term loans, or be able to connect her with additional grant opportunities. Many universities also have food pantries or programs to help with textbook costs.
That's good to know. I remember hearing about some of those programs, but I wasn't sure how they worked or if I'd even qualify.
It never hurts to ask. Another avenue is looking for part-time work, either on or off campus. Even a few hours a week can make a difference. And finally, there are often community resources like local charities or scholarship programs that might be available.
Those are all excellent points. So, proactive communication and exploring all available resources are key. Now, let's talk about prevention. What budgeting strategies could Maria implement to better handle the remainder of her costs and avoid similar surprises in the future?
The best strategy is to create a detailed budget before the semester even starts. This goes back to anticipating those hidden costs. Don't just budget for tuition, budget for everything. Estimate the cost of books. You can often find this information online or by contacting professors. Factor in transportation costs, gas, bus passes, etc., and create a line item for those other expenses.
It sounds like you almost need two budgets, one for the big upfront costs like tuition and room and board, and another for the ongoing, smaller expenses throughout the semester.
That's a great way to think about it, Taylor. You could even break it down further. A monthly or even weekly budget to track spending and make sure you're staying on track. There are also budgeting apps and online tools that can help with this.
And I imagine having those conversations with the financial aid office before the semester starts is also crucial to understand payment deadlines, available payment plans, and any other resources that might be available.
Absolutely. The more information you have up front, the better prepared you'll be. And don't be afraid to ask questions. The financial aid office is there to help.
Okay, let's recap some key takeaways from this conversation. First, tuition is only part of the total cost of college. Room and board, books, supplies, and other expenses can add up significantly. Second, proactive communication with the financial aid office is essential, both before and during the academic year. And third, creating a detailed budget that includes all anticipated expenses is the best way to avoid financial surprises.
This has been incredibly helpful. I'm definitely going to rethink how I approach my own budgeting for next semester.
And for our listeners, our call to action today is this. Create a detailed budget that includes all anticipated college expenses, not just tuition. Research available student resources for managing unexpected costs. Don't let those hidden costs catch you off guard. Next, we're tackling another tough decision many families face: choosing between an in-state public university and a more expensive, potentially more prestigious, out-of-state private school. We're calling this scenario David's in-state versus out-of-state decision.
This is definitely something a lot of my friends are dealing with right now, so it's super relevant.
Absolutely. So David's been accepted to both his in-state public university and a prestigious private university out of state. The private school even offered a generous financial aid package, but even with that, the total cost is still significantly higher than staying in state. He's really torn between the allure of that big-name school and the practicality of the lower cost. Sam, let's kick things off with the big question. How should David weigh the long-term financial implications of attending the more expensive private university versus the in-state option?
That's the $1,000,000 question, isn't it? Or in this case, maybe the $60,000 question, looking at the average total cost of private universities from our reference article. The first thing David needs to do is get a crystal clear picture of the total cost of attendance for both schools. And I mean everything. We're not just talking tuition. We're talking room and board, books, supplies, transportation, personal expenses, the whole 9 yards. The article we're referencing breaks this down beautifully, showing that room and board at a public, in-state 4-year school is actually often more than tuition.
Okay, that makes sense. So even if the private school's financial aid covers a big chunk of tuition, David might still be on the hook for a lot more than he realizes. But what about the argument that the private school might lead to better job opportunities and a higher salary down the line? That's what makes the decision so difficult, right?
That's a great point, Taylor, and it leads perfectly into our second question for Sam. Beyond the sticker price, what factors should David consider when comparing the value of each institution?
Exactly. It's not just about the cost today, it's about the potential return on investment. David needs to research things like graduation rates, average starting salaries for graduates in his intended major, and the strength of the alumni network at each school. A more expensive school might be worth it if it demonstrably leads to significantly better career outcomes. But that's a big if, and it requires careful research. Also consider the specific program. A state school might have a nationally ranked program in David's specific field of interest, even if the overall school ranking isn't as high.
So it's not just about the overall reputation of the school, but how well it prepares students for his specific career goals.
Precisely, and that connects to student debt. If David has to take out significantly more loans to attend the private school, he needs to calculate how long it will take him to pay those off, even with a potentially higher starting salary. That added debt burden could impact his life choices for years to come.
It is almost like you are reading our minds. My next question was, what conversations should David have with his family and the financial aid offices of both universities to make an informed decision?
Yeah, I'm wondering about the financial aid office part specifically. What kind of questions should he be asking them?
He should definitely have open and honest conversations with his family about their financial situation and what they can realistically contribute. He should ask the financial aid offices about the specifics of his aid package. Is it mostly grants and scholarships which don't need to be repaid, or is it mostly loans? Are the grants renewable? And what are the requirements to keep them? Will the aid package likely change in future years? He should also ask about work-study opportunities and any other resources available to help him manage costs.
So, if I understand correctly, David needs to get all the details in writing and really understand the fine print of his financial aid offer, not just the headline number, and he needs to compare that to the full cost picture for both schools.
Absolutely. And he should also look beyond the numbers, things like the campus culture, class sizes, opportunities for research or internships. All of these contribute to the overall value and can impact his success. Sometimes a slightly more affordable option in a better location might make more sense because the cost of commuting or the cost of housing could impact the overall cost.
That's incredibly helpful, Sam. This is such a complex decision, and it's so easy to get caught up in the excitement of getting into a dream school. But taking a step back and really analyzing the long-term financial implications, as well as the overall value proposition, is crucial. To recap, we've discussed the importance of comparing the total cost of attendance, not just tuition, when making a college decision. We've also talked about considering factors beyond the sticker price, like career outcomes and the specifics of financial aid packages. For our listeners facing similar choices, our call to action is this: carefully compare the total cost of attendance, including living expenses, for all college options. Don't let prestige alone dictate your decision. Next, we'll shift our focus to a family closer to home. We'll discuss the Thompsons' housing choice, debating the merits of living at home near a state college and commuting versus the classic college experience of living on campus, a cost that is surprisingly more than tuition at an in-state public four-year university, per the article we are referencing.
This is a big one. I remember agonizing over this with my own family.
Exactly, Taylor. It's a decision many families face. So, the Thompsons live close enough to a state college for their daughter, Emily, to commute. Emily, like many students, is drawn to the idea of living on campus, that classic college experience. But the Thompsons are looking at the numbers, and as is the case with many state schools, room and board is more than the tuition. They're understandably wondering if it's worth the extra expense. Sam, let's bring you in. This scenario perfectly highlights a key insight from the article, right?
Absolutely, Alex. The article really drives home the point that, especially at public four-year institutions, room and board often exceed tuition costs. We're talking about 43% of the total cost going to room and board, compared to 39% for tuition and fees. For many families, that flips the script on what they thought was the biggest expense.
That's a staggering statistic. So, the Thompsons are not alone in their concern. Taylor, what's your initial reaction? What jumps out at you?
Well, it makes me think about my friend, Chloe. She commuted her first year and felt like she missed out on a lot. She ended up moving into an apartment with friends off campus her sophomore year, which she said was a good compromise, more social, but still cheaper than the dorms. But the travel back and forth was rough during finals.
Great point, Taylor. There are trade-offs to every choice. Let's get to the root of it. Sam, let's break down the questions. First, how can the Thompsons quantify the non-financial benefits of Emily living on campus? Things like increased independence, those crucial social connections Taylor mentioned, against the very real financial cost.
It's tough because we're comparing apples and oranges, dollars versus personal growth. One way to approach it is to have a very frank family discussion. What are Emily's expectations for the college experience? What are the Thompsons' long-term financial goals? Are they comfortable taking on additional debt, or would that strain their finances significantly? They need to assign a value, even if it's subjective, to those intangible benefits. For example, is increased independence worth an extra $12,000 a year?
So it's almost like creating a pro-con list, but really digging deep into the why behind each item. Like, pro-independence isn't enough. It needs to be pro-independence, which will help Emily develop crucial life skills and prepare her for future challenges.
Precisely, Taylor. You're spot on. It's about connecting those benefits to Emily's overall development and long-term goals.
Another useful technique is to consider the opportunity cost. What else could the Thompsons do with that $12,000 plus per year? Could it go towards retirement savings, a down payment on a house, or even towards Emily's future graduate school expenses?
Excellent point, Sam. Opportunity cost is critical. Okay, next question for the Thompsons, and a common one. Are there alternative housing options besides the standard dorm that might be more cost-effective? Taylor, you touched on this with your friend's experience.
Yeah, I think so. There's off-campus housing like shared apartments, which can sometimes be cheaper, especially if you're splitting costs with multiple roommates, and you sometimes get more freedom. But you also have to factor in things like utilities, groceries, and potentially furniture, which aren't always included in dorm fees.
Exactly. And some universities offer different tiers of on-campus housing. Maybe there's a smaller, older dorm that's less expensive than the brand new, amenity-filled ones. There might also be options like living in a learning community or a themed residence hall that comes with additional responsibilities, but potentially lower costs. The key is to research all the options on the university's housing website and contact the housing office directly with questions.
Great advice. So, don't assume the advertised dorm rate is the only option. Now, the final piece of this puzzle, and this is where it gets tricky. What are the potential hidden costs and savings associated with both living on campus and commuting from home?
With living on campus, you have the obvious costs, the room and board fee itself. But there are also things like meal plans, which can vary in price and might not always be the most economical choice. Then there are activity fees, laundry costs, and the temptation to spend more on campus events and social outings.
And with commuting, I immediately think of gas, car maintenance, and parking permits, which can be surprisingly expensive on some campuses. Plus, the time spent commuting is time not spent studying, working, or participating in campus activities.
You're both right. Commuting can involve significant transportation costs, as you mentioned, but there are also potential hidden savings. If Emily lives at home, she might have access to home-cooked meals, saving money on food. She might also avoid some of the incidental expenses that come with campus life. The Thompsons need to do a detailed budget for both scenarios, factoring in all these potential costs and savings.
This has been incredibly helpful, Sam. I think the key here is to create two realistic, complete budgets with line items like what we mentioned. So, Taylor, sum it up for everyone. Key takeaway?
The decision of where to live while in college is more than just proximity. It is an emotional decision, a learning experience, and above all, a large financial consideration. To make the best choice, you really need to explore all the options, both obvious and hidden, and weigh all the costs, both financial and the harder to quantify non-financial benefits and costs.
Absolutely. And our call to action for listeners today reflects that. Explore all housing options and their associated costs, including on-campus, off-campus, and commuting. Factor in both financial and non-financial considerations. Don't make assumptions. Do the research. Now we are going to shift gears and explore some immediate options that were maybe a bit too late for the Millers to explore. We're diving into the world of financial aid with the Rodriguez family. Their son, Carlos, is a high school senior, and like many families, they're feeling a bit overwhelmed by the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. They're not even sure they'll qualify for anything, and the whole process seems daunting. Sam, Taylor, let's help them out. Taylor, does this resonate with you at all, that feeling of FAFSA phobia?
Absolutely, Alex. I remember when my older cousin was applying to college. The FAFSA seemed like this mysterious, complicated form that everyone dreaded. My aunt and uncle were constantly stressed about getting it right, and they weren't even sure if it was worth the effort. They, like the Rodriguez family, I think, had a moderate income, so they assumed they wouldn't get much help.
That's a super common misconception, and it's exactly what we want to address. Sam, let's start with the basics. For a family like the Rodriguezes, feeling lost and intimidated, where do they even begin? What resources are available to help them navigate the FAFSA process and understand their eligibility for aid?
That's a great starting point, Alex. The good news is there are tons of resources, and many of them are completely free. First, the official website, studentaid.gov, is a goldmine. It has detailed guides, FAQs, and even video tutorials that walk you through each step of the application. They've also really focused on streamlining the FAFSA in recent years, making it much more user-friendly.
Studentaid.gov. Okay, that makes sense. But what if you need more personalized help? Are there people you can actually talk to?
Yes, definitely. High school guidance counselors are often a fantastic resource. They're familiar with the FAFSA and can provide guidance specific to Carlos's situation and the schools he's applying to. Also, many colleges host FAFSA workshops, both in person and online, for prospective students and their families. These workshops are usually led by financial aid professionals who can answer questions and offer expert advice.
Those workshops sound incredibly helpful. It's like having a FAFSA coach in your corner. Now let's talk about common pitfalls. What are some frequent mistakes families make when completing the FAFSA, and how can the Rodriguez family avoid them?
One of the biggest mistakes is simply not filling it out. Many families, like Taylor's aunt and uncle, assume they won't qualify and don't even bother. That's a huge missed opportunity. Other common errors include 1. Incorrect social security numbers or other identifying information. Double, triple check everything. 2. Using estimates instead of actual tax information. The FAFSA now allows you to directly link to your IRS tax return data, which makes this much easier and more accurate. Use this feature. 3. Not reporting all required assets. There are specific rules about what assets need to be reported, and it's important to understand those. StudentAid.gov has clear guidelines on this. 4. Missing the deadline. Each state and college may have different FAFSA deadlines. It is best to complete this as soon as you can.
So using that IRS data retrieval tool is key, it sounds like. That would definitely reduce the stress of digging up all those tax documents. But what if, after all that, the Rodriguez family finds out they don't qualify for a substantial Pell Grant or other need-based aid? Is there still a point to filling out the FAFSA?
That's the crucial question, Taylor. Sam, what are the other benefits, even for families who might not get significant need-based grants?
Absolutely. Even if you don't qualify for need-based grants, the FAFSA is often required for other types of aid, including 1. Federal student loans. The FAFSA is the gateway to federal student loans, which generally have better terms and interest rates than private loans. 2. Merit-based aid. Some colleges and universities require the FAFSA even for merit-based scholarships. They use it to get a complete picture of a student's financial situation. 3. State aid. Many states use the FAFSA to determine eligibility for state-based grants and scholarships. 4. Institutional aid. Colleges themselves often use the FAFSA to award their own institutional aid, which can include grants, scholarships, and work-study programs.
Okay, that's a really important point. So the FAFSA is like a master key. It unlocks access to a whole range of financial aid possibilities, not just need-based grants. It's not just about the Pell Grant.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the Rodriguez family. By completing the FAFSA, they're opening doors they might not even know exist. They're maximizing their chances of finding some form of assistance to make Carlos's college education more affordable.
Precisely. And remember, the F in FAFSA stands for free. It costs nothing to apply, so there's really no downside to completing it. The potential upside, however, is significant.
Fantastic point, Sam. Let's recap the key takeaways for our listeners. 1. The FAFSA is the starting point for most financial aid, not just need-based grants. 2. Numerous free resources are available to help families navigate the process, including StudentAid.gov, high school guidance counselors, and college financial aid workshops. 3. Avoid common mistakes by double-checking information, using the IRS data retrieval tool, and being aware of deadlines. 4. Even if you think you do not qualify, filling the FAFSA out is still in your best interest. And our call to action for today is clear. Complete the FAFSA early, even if you're unsure if you'll qualify for aid. Utilize available resources to ensure accurate completion. Don't leave money on the table. Next, we're shifting our focus to a different but equally important aspect of financial aid, merit-based scholarships. We're looking at Lisa's situation. She's a junior, a high achiever, and her family's income makes significant need-based aid unlikely. So the scholarship route is key for her.
This is actually something I'm starting to think about myself. I'm not quite a junior yet, but college is definitely on the horizon. It feels like there are a million scholarships out there, but finding the right ones seems daunting.
Exactly, Taylor, and that's a feeling many students and families share. Sam, let's bring you in. Lisa's situation is pretty common. Great grades, involved in extracurriculars, but her family won't qualify for much need-based aid. Based on this, I have these questions for you, Sam. 1. What strategies can Lisa use to identify and apply for merit-based scholarships that align with her academic profile and interests? 2. How can Lisa tailor her college applications to highlight her achievements and increase her chances of receiving scholarship offers? 3. Beyond academic merit, what other factors might influence scholarship eligibility, and how can Lisa leverage them?
Absolutely, Alex. Lisa's in a great position to start early, which is a massive advantage. Let's tackle those questions one by one. First, identifying the right scholarships. This is about being strategic and organized. Lisa should start with a broad search and then narrow it down. There are several excellent online resources, scholarship search engines like FastWeb, scholarships.com, and the College Board's Big Future. These allow her to input her GPA, test scores, interests, and activities, and they'll generate a list of potential matches.
So it's like a personalized search, not just a random Google search.
Precisely. These platforms use algorithms to match students with scholarships they're more likely to qualify for. But it's not just about the big national scholarships. Lisa should also investigate local opportunities. Her high school guidance counselor will be a valuable resource. They often have information about scholarships offered by local businesses, community organizations, and even specific colleges she's considering.
That's a great point, Sam. It's easy to get caught up in the big-name scholarships, but those local ones can be less competitive and just as impactful.
Exactly. Now for the second question, tailoring her applications. This is where Lisa's story comes in. Each scholarship application is a chance to showcase her achievements and connect them to the scholarship's mission. She needs to go beyond just listing her accomplishments. She needs to explain how those experiences have shaped her, what she's learned, and how they relate to her future goals.
So instead of just saying, I was president of the debate club, she should talk about the skills she developed: leadership, public speaking, critical thinking, and how those skills will help her succeed in college and beyond.
You got it, Taylor. It's about demonstrating impact and showing the scholarship committee why she deserves their investment. And this applies to essays, letters of recommendation, and even the activities section of the application. Every element should contribute to a cohesive narrative.
It's like building a compelling case, isn't it? You're presenting evidence to support your claim that you're the best candidate.
Absolutely. Finally, let's talk about factors beyond academic merit. While grades and test scores are important, scholarship committees often look for well-rounded individuals. Things like leadership roles in clubs, volunteer work, community involvement, and even unique talents or skills can make a difference. Some scholarships are specifically targeted towards students with certain interests, say STEM, the arts, or community service.
So if Lisa's passionate about environmental activism, she should look for scholarships that support that specific area.
Exactly. And she should highlight her involvement in that area throughout her application, demonstrating her commitment and passion. Some scholarships even consider demonstrated financial need in addition to merit. Even if her family's income is higher, if she can demonstrate significant expenses or extenuating circumstances, that could be a factor.
That's a really important point, Sam. It underscores the importance of being thorough and exploring all avenues. You never know what opportunities might be out there. And it all comes back to that early planning we talked about earlier, that proactive approach.
Precisely. The more time Lisa invests now, the better her chances of securing funding. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Excellent advice, Sam. To recap, Lisa and all students aiming for merit-based scholarships should: 1. Utilize online scholarship search engines and connect with their guidance counselor. 2. Tailor their applications to tell a compelling story about their achievements and goals. And 3. Look beyond academics and highlight their unique skills, interests, and experiences. And for our listeners, our call to action is: start your scholarship search early and dedicate time to crafting strong applications. Explore a wide range of scholarship opportunities. Don't leave any stone unturned. Now, we're shifting gears to a different yet equally important scenario: the Miller family. They're facing a common challenge. They haven't saved for college, and their son, Ben, is now a senior in high school, right in the thick of college applications. They're feeling the pressure, and understandably so. They're a middle-income family, and those college cost numbers we looked at earlier can be pretty intimidating.
Yeah, that's a tough spot to be in. I can only imagine the stress they must be feeling. It's like they're starting a race that everyone else got a head start on.
Exactly, Taylor. And that's why this scenario is so valuable to discuss. Many families find themselves in similar situations. So Sam, let's bring you in. Let's put ourselves in the Miller's shoes. With Ben already a senior, what immediate steps can the Miller family take to understand their financial aid options, given this limited time frame?
Well, Alex, the first thing is, don't panic. It's definitely a tighter timeline, but there are still options. The absolute first step is completing the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA, as soon as possible. It opened on October 1st, and the sooner it is completed, the better. Even if they think they might not qualify for need-based aid, completing the FAFSA is crucial. It's the gateway to all federal aid, including student loans, and some schools require it for merit-based aid consideration as well.
Okay, so FAFSA is priority number one. But what if they've heard it's super complicated? I've heard horror stories about the paperwork.
That's a valid concern, Taylor. It used to be quite lengthy, but as the article mentions, the FAFSA has been significantly streamlined. There are also tons of resources available to help. The Department of Education's Federal Student Aid website has guides, videos, and even live chat support. Many high schools also host FAFSA workshops for parents and students.
That's good to know. So accessing those support resources is key. Now, the second question for you, Sam, are there any resources or strategies specifically designed for families who are, like the Millers, starting this college planning process late in the game?
Absolutely. Beyond the FAFSA, they should immediately contact the financial aid offices of the colleges Ben is applying to. These offices are staffed with professionals who can explain the school's specific aid policies, deadlines, and any potential institutional aid Ben might qualify for. They can also discuss payment plan options.
So, it's not just about filling out forms, it's about actively communicating with the colleges.
Precisely. It's about building a relationship and understanding the specific financial landscape of each institution. Another resource is a qualified financial advisor, preferably one specializing in college funding. While there might be a fee involved, a good advisor can help them explore all options, including loans, and potentially identify strategies they might have overlooked.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like getting a personalized roadmap for their situation. Now, let's tackle the potentially difficult conversation. How can the Millers have an honest conversation with Ben about the financial realities of college and potentially adjust their expectations? This must be tough for parents.
This is crucial, and honesty is the best policy. The Millers need to sit down with Ben and present a clear picture of their financial situation. They should explain what they can realistically contribute and what that means in terms of college choices. This might involve prioritizing in-state public universities over more expensive private options, or considering a community college for the first year or two to save on tuition.
That makes sense, but it also sounds like a potentially heartbreaking conversation. What if Ben has his heart set on a particular expensive school?
It can be tough, but framing it as a collaborative effort helps. Instead of saying, "We can't afford it," they can say, "Let's work together to find the best path to your goals, given our resources." This could involve Ben taking on a part-time job, applying for additional scholarships, even ones with later deadlines, or exploring loan options responsibly. It emphasizes shared responsibility. It is also important to consider that, as the reference article shows, room and board can represent a greater percentage of the total costs of attendance at a public four-year college, 43%, than the tuition itself, 39%. So looking at options for reducing those costs is also critical.
That reframing is really powerful. It shifts the focus from limitations to solutions. And that point about room and board is excellent, Sam, a reminder that tuition isn't the whole story.
So if I understand correctly, even if saving hasn't been happening, there are still avenues to explore. It's about being proactive, communicating openly, and using all available resources.
Exactly, Taylor. You've hit the nail on the head. The key takeaways here are: first, complete the FAFSA immediately. Second, contact the financial aid offices of the colleges Ben is considering. Third, have an open and honest conversation with Ben about the financial realities and work together to find solutions. And finally, remember our call to action for this segment. It's never too late to start planning, but act quickly. Consult with a financial advisor and your high school's guidance counselor to explore all available options. And that's a wrap on today's deep dive into the world of college costs. We really unpacked a lot today, didn't we? From the stark reality of that growing gap between tuition and income, highlighted so clearly in the Understanding Today's College Costs article, to the surprising impact of those often overlooked expenses like room and board and books. We saw how those hidden costs really caught Maria off guard and how crucial it is to factor everything in, just like David had to do when comparing his in state and out of state options. The Jones family's dilemma really hit home, I think, showing us the importance of starting that college cost conversation early. And the Rodriguez family reminded us that even if the FAFSA seems daunting, it's a critical step, no matter your income level. I truly hope this episode has empowered you to seize financial control and understand the financial choices you're making when it comes to higher education. Remember, embracing mastery of cash flow and creating a financial safety net are absolutely achievable, even with something as significant as college funding. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for tuning in to the Safe Simple Sound podcast, College Planning Edition. We're so grateful to have you as part of our community. Please take a moment to visit our show notes for links to the article and other helpful resources. If you found this episode valuable, leave us a review. It really helps us reach more families. And, of course, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future episodes. Until next, remember to keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep striving for financial well-being. This is Alex, wishing you a safe, simple, and sound financial journey.